Hello and welcome. My name is Waldo, and this GM 6.5 diesel has an engine knock. In this video, I replaced the injectors to see if that fixes the issue. This engine has a bad sounding knock. In a recent video, I introduced this project truck and I asked you guys for input about what I should do with the engine. I got some good responses. One of you guys recommended that I should keep the engine and repair it. Previously, I was operating under the assumption that this engine would need a major overhaul, but as I've thought more about it, I'm not quite so sure. The knock occurs at 1/2 the engine RPM, which makes me wonder if maybe there's a bad injector. What can happen is, as injectors age, they can open at a lower fuel pressure, which advances the timing in that cylinder and causes the injector to fire early. There's also the possibility that the injector is stuck open, causing fuel to constantly leak into the cylinder. Either way, when a cylinder combusts early, it can cause a knocking sound as the piston and connecting rod are exposed to far more force than under normal operating conditions. The noise also seems to be coming from the right side of the engine. Of course, that's the turbo side, which makes everything a lot harder to access. Originally, I was planning on determining exactly which cylinder is making the knocking noise by loosening the fuel lines one by one while the engine is running and listening for a change in the engine noise. But there are a couple problems with that approach. First, 2 of the fuel lines are completely blocked by the turbo, so there's no way I'll be able to access them with the engine running. Second, removing even a single injector is a large amount of work, requiring removing the turbo and the intake manifold, so I just decided to replace all the injectors at once. At about $39 a piece, it only costs about $312 to replace all 8 injectors. Now I'll start this thing up so we can hear what it sounds like. Notice that even after the engine starts, smoke still continuously comes out of the exhaust. This can be a sign of a bad injector, although it's also kind of hard to tell if the smoke is blue, which would mean it's burning oil, which would be very bad and probably not a bad injector. If you listen closely, you can also hear the knocking sound. Now, of course, old diesel engines are expected to be loud and noisy, but there is a distinctive knocking noise here. The first step is to remove the battery, the airbox, and the right fender liner so I can get access to the turbo. Now that I have the fender lining removed, I have so much room where I can get in from underneath here to access the turbo bolts down below. That'll make my life a lot easier. That was the easiest turbo to manifold nut ever. And now for the hardest one, the one that's back in this corner. I just got this nifty little line socket, 19mm, to help with removing fuel lines. That'll make it a lot easier than trying to fit a wrench in there. So with these fuel lines loose, I can now remove the injectors. So we'll use a 30mm socket. Get over it, hopefully. Oh, that's tight. Fits so these are supposed to be torqued to 50 foot-pounds, so take a little bit of force to get it off, probably. Oh, nope, that's not hard at all. Alright, we don't want to ratchet though. So this is the very last injector to go in. They have these little fuel return ports. Because this is the very one in the one in the back, the farthest most in the back. It has a plug on one side, and then this a hose attaches this to this, which goes to the next injector, and then it goes on and on until it goes back to the fuel return on the injection pump. But anyway, so my point is, it's really hard to get these things on while they're in the engine. It's hard to get them on while they're out of the engine. It's so much harder to get them on while they're in the engine, and extremely hard to access, especially because you need needle nose pliers to loosen up these clamps. And then they don't just go, you know, it's too tight here. They don't just kind of go down by themselves. You actually have to force it down with something like a flathead screwdriver or whatever. So anyway, this one I got on before I put it into the engine. Hopefully the socket will fit over this so I can tighten it up. As for the other hose, well, I'll get that later. Hopefully it won't be too difficult, but I didn't film this part, and I'm not actually going to film putting the hoses on this, the return hoses, because if I did, it wouldn't be family friendly, let's be honest. It's incredibly frustrating, and plus you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing anyway. So, well, anyway, last injector going in. All right, everything is back together, so I'm going to try starting it up. Now, I haven't bled the fuel system yet, so there's going to be a lot of cranking while I do that. I'm not sure if I'm going to have to crack the injectors to get the air out of the system, but we'll see what happens. Well, it looks like that fixed the issue. Once the engine started, there was no longer any smoke, and the knocking sound was gone. I may still do an engine swap on this truck in the future, but for now I'm going to work on getting it on the road so I can use it. My next plans for this truck involve installing some nice leather seats and building a flatbed for it, so you'll have plenty of opportunity to comment on my welding skills. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Thank you for watching.